The great doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a soft hiss. Ambassador Kethara floated through the entrance, her blue translucent body shimmering under the artificial lights. Water droplets fell from her skin onto the polished floor. As she moved toward the center of the vast room, every eye in the chamber turned to watch her approach. The chamber could hold 10,000 beings, but today only 300 delegates sat in their assigned seats. Representatives from dozens of species watched the Zephyrian ambassador with curious eyes. Some had never seen her kind before. Others knew exactly why she was here, and that knowledge made them uncomfortable. Kethara's breathing apparatus made soft bubbling sounds as she reached the speaking platform. The water-filled suit that kept her alive outside her home world was heavy, but she carried herself with dignity despite her obvious distress. Her large black eyes swept across the assembled delegates as she activated the universal translator. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sound system. "I come before you today not as a diplomat, but as a mother pleading for the lives of her children." The chamber fell silent. Even the usual whispers and side conversations stopped. 3 months ago, the Vector hegemony began their assault on Zephyrian space. They came without warning, without demands, without any attempt at communication. They simply arrived and began destroying everything in their path. Kethara activated a holographic display that filled the air above the chamber. Images of beautiful, blue-green worlds appeared, showing cities that looked like coral reefs rising from vast oceans. The next image showed those same cities burning, their graceful spires collapsed and smoking. The first world they hit was Aquatica Prime, home to 12 million of my people. The Vector ships appeared in orbit and began what they call cleansing fire. They burned the oceans themselves. The water turned to steam, and my people died gasping in the poisoned air. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Mentari representative, a tall insect-like being, clicked his mandibles nervously. The Kalari trade minister looked down at her notes, unable to meet Kethara's desperate gaze. 7 worlds have fallen. 7 worlds of peaceful people who had never raised a weapon against any living being. The Vector take no prisoners. They accept no surrender. They leave nothing alive. The holographic display showed more images. Vector ships were massive, dark things that looked like flying fortresses. Their hulls were covered in spikes and weapon ports. Everything about them screamed violence and death. "We tried to fight back," Kethara continued, her voice breaking slightly. "Our defense fleets were built for protection, not for war. The Vector destroyed them in minutes. Our weapons couldn't even scratch their shields. Our people died without being able to strike a single blow in return." Chairman Vexthul, the leader of the Galactic Council, leaned forward in his seat. He was from the Mentari Republic, a species that looked like giant praying mantises, but were actually peaceful traders and diplomats. His compound eyes reflected the light from the holographic display. "Ambassador Kethara," he said carefully, "the Council sympathizes with your people's suffering. But the Vector hegemony is not a member of our organization. We have no authority over their actions." "I'm not asking for authority," Kethara replied quickly. "I'm asking for help. Military help. The Confederation Defense Treaty states that any member species under threat of extinction can request aid from other members." The chamber erupted in worried murmurs. Several delegates stood up and began talking to their neighbors. The Kalari minister actually got up and walked toward the exit, but stopped when Chairman Vexthul called for order. "The treaty you mention is rarely invoked," Vexthul said slowly. "And when it has been used in the past, the results have been mixed. Most species in the Council maintain only small defense forces. We are traders and diplomats, not warriors." "Then what am I supposed to do?" Kethara's voice rose, and bubbles escaped from her breathing apparatus. "Am I supposed to go home and tell my people to prepare to die?" Am I supposed to watch as the Vrektor burn our remaining worlds one by one? The silence that followed was broken by a small, dry cough from the far corner of the chamber. Every head turned toward the sound. In the section reserved for minor species sat a single figure that most delegates tried to ignore. Commander Jake Morrison of the Terran Federation looked exactly like what he was, a career military officer who had seen too much combat. His hair was gray at the temples, and his face was marked by lines that spoke of difficult decisions and sleepless nights. He wore a simple blue uniform with no decorations except for a small pin showing the image of a blue and green world. Morrison stood up slowly, his movements careful and controlled. Chairman Vexthul, if I may. The entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. Nobody spoke to the human unless they had to. Everyone knew the stories about the Deathworld called Earth, about the violent creatures that somehow managed to build spaceships and join galactic civilization. They were tolerated because they kept to themselves and paid their trade fees on time, but nobody really wanted to interact with them. Of course, Commander Morrison, Vexthul said, though his voice carried a note of reluctance. Morrison walked down the steps toward the center of the chamber. His boots made soft clicking sounds on the polished floor. When he reached the speaking area, he looked directly at Kethara. Ambassador, I need to understand the situation clearly. How many Vrektor ships are we talking about? Kethara activated her display again, showing tactical readouts. Our intelligence suggests they have committed approximately 400 vessels to the campaign. Heavy cruisers, battleships, and support craft. Their technology is superior to anything we've ever encountered. Morrison nodded, studying the information. And how much time do your remaining worlds have? 2 weeks, maybe 3. They're moving systematically through our space, destroying everything they find. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, his eyes focused on the tactical display. The rest of the chamber watched him with a mixture of curiosity and fear. Nobody knew what the human was thinking, and that uncertainty made them nervous. I'll need to consult with Earth Command, Morrison said finally. This isn't a decision I can make alone. How long will that take? Kethara asked desperately. 72 standard hours. I'll have an answer for you by then. Chairman Vexthul cleared his throat. Commander Morrison, I feel I should remind you that military action against the Vrektor would be extremely dangerous. They have conquered 17 species in the last century. Their military is considered one of the most powerful in known space. Morrison looked at the Montari chairman with cold, steady eyes. Thank you for the warning, Chairman. I'll make sure to include that information in my report to Earth Command. The human turned and walked back to his seat without another word. The chamber remained silent until he sat down. Then the whispers began again, but this time they carried a different tone. Fear mixed with curiosity as delegates wondered what they had just witnessed. Kethara watched Morrison with new hope in her eyes. She didn't know much about humans, but she had heard the stories. Everyone had heard the stories about the species that came from a world so dangerous it killed most visitors within hours. A world where the native creatures fought constant wars against their own environment just to survive. Maybe, just maybe, beings that savage could help her people. As the session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, Morrison remained in his seat, already composing his message to Earth. The message would be simple and direct, the way his superiors preferred it. The Galactic Council had just asked the most dangerous species in known space to go to war. They had no idea what they had started. The first strange report came 18 hours after Commander Morrison sent his message to Earth. Captain Veltar of the merchant vessel Golden Wing was carrying a load of rare crystals through the outer edge of human space when his sensors detected something unusual. Control, this is Golden Wing requesting information about scheduled military exercises in Sector 77 Alpha. Veltar transmitted to the nearest traffic control station. Golden Wing, we show no scheduled exercises in that sector. What are you detecting? Veltar looked at his sensor display again, not believing what he was seeing. Control, I'm reading massive energy signatures. Multiple contacts moving information. The power output is... This can't be right. Golden Wing, please transmit your sensor data for analysis. The Kalari captain uploaded his readings and waited. When the response came, the traffic controller's voice was different, more formal and nervous. Golden Wing, you are advised to alter course immediately and avoid human military zones. There is no scheduled exercise. Repeat, avoid all human military zones until further notice. Veltar changed course quickly, but he couldn't stop thinking about what his sensors had shown him. Ships that big shouldn't exist. No species built vessels with power signatures that strong. It was impossible. Similar reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Deep space monitoring stations detected gravitational waves that suggested huge masses moving at high speed. Trading posts near human space reported strange energy readings. Communication relays picked up encrypted transmissions using frequencies that no one recognized. Dr. Yexandra sat in her small office deep within the Galactic Council station, surrounded by data screens and analysis reports. As the Council's chief military analyst, it was her job to understand what was happening. The problem was that nothing she was seeing made sense. She was a Vorthek, a species known for their analytical minds and attention to detail. Her four arms worked independently as she sorted through reports, cross-referenced data, and tried to build a picture of what the humans were doing. The energy readings were the most disturbing part. According to her calculations, the power signatures detected by various sensors would require ships at least 5 times larger than the biggest known vessels in galactic space. But humans had never shown any indication of possessing such technology. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Dr. Yexandra opened the transmission and found herself looking at Commander Zulvex of the Kalari Deep Space Monitoring Network. Doctor, I need to speak with someone in authority immediately. We've detected something that defies explanation. Send me your data, Commander. I'll analyze it and forward my findings to the appropriate committees. No, you don't understand. This needs immediate attention. We're tracking multiple large objects moving through hyperspace toward Vrektor territory. The mass displacement suggests ships measuring in the tens of kilometers. Dr. Yexandra's 4 hands stopped moving. That's impossible. No one builds ships that large. The structural integrity alone would be impossible to maintain. I know what's impossible, Doctor. I'm telling you what my instruments are detecting. Whatever the humans are moving, it's bigger than anything we've ever seen. The call ended, leaving Dr. Yexandra staring at her screens. She began pulling up every piece of data the Council had on human military capabilities. The file was surprisingly thin. Humans kept their military information classified, sharing only basic details required for Council membership. What she found was disturbing in its simplicity. Human ships were described as adequate for defensive purposes. Their weapons technology was listed as conventional energy and kinetic systems. Their fleet size was estimated at sufficient for local security needs. But the recent sensor data told a completely different story. Either the humans had been lying about their capabilities for decades, or they had somehow built a massive fleet in complete secrecy. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the command center of Luna Base, humanity's primary military coordination facility. The room was filled with officers working at dozens of control stations, coordinating the movement of ships across multiple star systems. Carter was a veteran of humanity's colonial expansion period, when Earth's growing population had spread to dozens of worlds. She had fought pirates, dealt with hostile alien encounters, and supervised the construction of humanity's hidden defense network. Now, at age 55, she was about to lead the largest human military operation in history. "Admiral, all fleet. Elements are reporting ready status," announced Captain Danny Brooks, her chief of staff. "Operation Thunderstrike is go for implementation." Carter nodded, studying the tactical display that showed the positions of 17 major warships and their escort vessels. Each ship represented years of secret construction, hidden from galactic observers by careful scheduling and misdirection. "What's our intelligence on Vector defensive positions?" Carter asked. "Standard formation, ma'am." They're confident in their superiority and not expecting resistance. Their main battle fleet is spread across 3 systems, with smaller groups handling occupation duties. Carter allowed herself a small smile. Overconfidence was a weakness that human military doctrine knew how to exploit. Back on the Council station, Ambassador Kethera waited in her quarters for any news about the human response. Her water-filled room provided the environment she needed to survive. But comfort was impossible while her people continued to die. She had spent the last 2 days researching everything the galactic databases contained about humans. Most of it was routine trade information and basic biological data. But buried in the older files, she found references that made her both hopeful and terrified. Humans came from a world classified as a Class 12 death world, the highest rating on the habitability scale. Their planet's surface was covered with predators, toxic plants, extreme weather, and natural disasters that would kill most galactic species in minutes. Yet humans had not only survived, but thrived in such conditions. The few xenobiologists who had studied humans noted their unusual physical capabilities. They were stronger and faster than most species, with reflexes adapted for constant danger. Their psychology showed unusual traits: pack loyalty, strategic thinking, and an ability to make decisions under extreme stress. Most disturbing of all was a note from a Mentari researcher who had observed human military exercises. Humans appear to view warfare as a science rather than a necessary evil. Their tactical planning is remarkably sophisticated, and they show no emotional hesitation when employing violence against enemies. A soft chime announced an incoming message. Kethara opened the transmission eagerly, hoping for good news. Instead, she found herself looking at Commander Morrison's calm, professional face. "Ambassador Kethara, I have Earth Command's response to your request for assistance. Yes, humanity accepts the contract. We will handle the Vector situation. However, I must strongly recommend that all Council vessels maintain a minimum distance of 5 light-years from Vector space until we signal an all clear." Kethara felt relief flood through her body, but Morrison's warning puzzled her. 5 light-years? Commander, that seems like an excessive safety margin. Morrison's expression didn't change. "Ambassador, trust me on this. 5 light-years minimum. We'll contact you when the operation is complete." The transmission ended, leaving Kethera alone with her questions. What exactly were the humans planning that required such a large safety zone? And why did Morrison look like he was trying not to smile when he delivered his warning? Across the galaxy, merchant ships, monitoring stations, and military observers continued to detect the movement of massive objects through hyperspace. Something unprecedented was heading toward Vector territory, and nobody except the humans knew what it was. The 72-hour deadline had passed. Now the galaxy would discover what happened when someone made the mistake of threatening species under human protection. Captain Zulvex had been running Deep Space Monitor Gamma 7 for 12 years. His job was simple: watch empty space and report anything unusual. In 12 years, the most exciting thing he had seen was a comet that changed course slightly due to gravitational effects. Today was different. "Sir, I'm getting readings that don't make sense," reported his sensor operator, a young Kelari named Jendel. Zulvex floated over to the sensor station, his tentacles moving him gracefully through the zero-gravity environment. What kind of readings? Multiple contacts approaching from human space. The energy signatures are, well, they're impossible. Zulvex looked at the display and felt his skin change color from calm blue to alarmed purple. The contacts were still far away, but their energy output was already stronger than most space stations. How many contacts? 17 distinct signatures, sir. The smallest one is showing 3 kilometers in length, the largest. Jendel paused, checking her instruments again. Sir, the largest contact is reading 47 kilometers long. That's impossible. Nothing that big could hold together in space. Check your equipment. Jendel ran a full diagnostic on the sensor array. Equipment is functioning normally, sir. The contacts are real. Zulvex activated the emergency communication system. Priority transmission to Galactic Council. This is Deep Space Monitor Gamma 7. We have multiple contacts approaching Vrektor space. The lead vessel is 12 kilometers long. He paused, looking at the sensor readings again. The contacts were getting closer, and the details were becoming clearer. What he was seeing changed everything he thought he knew about space warfare. Correction, he continued into the communicator. The 12-kilometer contact is not the lead vessel. It appears to be an escort. We're reading 17 distinct energy signatures, ranging from 3 kilometers to 47 kilometers in length. Request immediate Council fleet support to investigate. Before he could say more, new contacts appeared on his sensors. These were smaller but moving faster, spreading out information around the massive ships. Sir, Jendel called out, her voice tight with fear. I'm counting over 100 additional contacts. Cruiser and destroyer-class vessels taking escort positions. Zulvex opened his mouth to update his transmission when every system on the monitoring station went dark. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, but the communication array was completely dead. What happened? He demanded. Unknown, sir. Some kind of jamming field just passed over us. We're cut off from all outside communication. Through the station's main viewport, Zulvex could see lights in the distance. Not stars, but the running lights of ships so large they were visible from millions of kilometers away. As he watched, more lights appeared, forming patterns that stretched across space like a constellation of artificial stars. 47 kilometers away, Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the command bridge of the U.S. Leviathan, humanity's first and largest dreadnought. The ship had been built in secret over 30 years, using materials mined from the asteroid belts of the Sol system. Its construction had required the combined resources of 12 human colonies and represented the most advanced technology humanity had ever created. Admiral, all fleet elements are in position, reported Captain Danny Brooks from his station. We're receiving multiple hails from galactic observers requesting identification. Carter looked at the tactical display showing her fleet's formation. 12 battleships, each one larger than any known alien vessel. 30 cruisers built for speed and firepower. Over 100 destroyers and frigates designed for close combat. And dozens of support ships whose purposes were classified, even within human military circles. What's our status on the Vrektor fleet? Carter asked. Intelligence. Reports 200 enemy vessels spread across 3 systems, ma'am. They're maintaining standard occupation patterns, not expecting any resistance. Carter nodded. The Vrektor had grown overconfident after decades of easy victories. They were about to learn that some species bit back. Communications, transmit. Our response to the galactic observers. Tell them we're here to solve their Vrektor problem. All Council vessels are to maintain safe distance or risk being classified as hostile. Yes, ma'am. What about the Vrektor themselves? Carter's expression hardened. She had read the reports about what the Vrektor did to conquered populations. Entire species wiped out, worlds burned to glass, civilians murdered for sport. Humanity had its own dark history, But even humans had rules about warfare. Send them. The standard greeting, Captain. The standard greeting was broadcast on all frequencies in perfect Vector language. The message was simple and direct. This is Admiral Lisa Carter of the Human Defense Force. You have 24 standard hours to withdraw from all Zephyrian systems and return captured populations unharmed. This is your only warning. The response came within minutes. War Prime Thector, commander of the Vector 3rd Battle Fleet, sent back his own message. It was filled with threats, boasts about Vector superiority, and promises to add human ships to his collection of conquered trophies. Carter listened to the entire transmission without expression. When it ended, she turned to her tactical officer. Colonel Martinez, what's your assessment of enemy capabilities? Colonel Roy Martinez had spent 15 years studying alien military technology. His analysis was brief and professional. Standard. Plasma weapons, kinetic projectiles, energy shields using outdated technology. Their ships are large but built for intimidation rather than efficiency. Estimated combat effectiveness, minimal. And our own capabilities in comparison? Ma'am, our weapon systems are approximately 40 years more advanced than anything they're using. Our shields can absorb their entire fleet's firepower without strain. Our targeting systems can track and engage every enemy vessel simultaneously. Carter nodded. This was going to be even easier than the simulations had predicted. All ships, this is Admiral Carter. You are authorized to engage enemy forces as soon as they enter weapons range. Rules of engagement are simple. No survivors, no prisoners, no mercy. These beings have committed genocide against civilians. They will receive the same consideration they have shown to others. Across the human fleet, captains acknowledged their orders. Captain Jenny Lewis aboard the cruiser UES Thunderbolt began final weapons checks. Captain Mike Rodriguez on the destroyer UES Warhawk powered up his ship's advanced targeting systems. Throughout the fleet, thousands of human crew members prepared for the kind of battle their species had been training for since they first reached the stars. The Vector had spent generations terrorizing peaceful species that couldn't fight back. They had never faced an enemy that was stronger, faster, and more ruthless than they were in the depths of space. War Prime Thector assembled his fleet for what he expected to be another easy victory. 200 Vector warships moved into attack formation, their crews eager for battle and the spoils that would follow. They had no idea they were flying toward their own extinction. The age of Vector dominance was about to end in fire and wreckage, ended by a species that had learned to fight on a world where everything wanted to kill them. The human fleet waited in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready. In 24 hours, the galaxy would learn what happened when someone threatened beings under human protection. The lesson would be written in the debris of the Vector fleet. War Prime Thector stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Bone Crusher, watching the tactical display with growing excitement. 200 Vector warships moved through space in perfect attack formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons and their crews hungry for battle. Unknown vessels, you will surrender immediately or be destroyed. Thector broadcast on all frequencies. I am War Prime Thector of the glorious Vector hegemony. We have conquered 17 species and added their ships to our fleet. Your vessels will make fine additions to our collection. The response from the human fleet was silence. Thector, second in command, battle leader Kexival, studied the enemy formation through their long-range sensors. War Prime, the enemy ships are unusually large. Some of them register as bigger than our heaviest battleships. Size means nothing without proper weapons, Thector replied dismissively. These creatures probably built cargo haulers and tried to make them look like warships. We'll tear them apart and take their metal for scrap. The Vector fleet accelerated toward the human formation, their crews chanting war songs and preparing. Boarding parties. For generations, this had been their standard tactic. Overwhelm the enemy with superior numbers, then board their ships to capture survivors for slavery. Admiral Carter watched the approaching enemy fleet from the bridge of the Leviathan. Her tactical display showed every Vector ship in perfect detail, along with projected flight paths, weapon signatures, and structural weak points. "Ma'am, enemy fleet will enter our maximum weapons range in 3 minutes," reported Colonel Martinez. "All ships, prepare to engage. Remember, we're not just fighting for the Zephyrians. We're showing the galaxy what happens when someone commits genocide against civilians." Captain Jenny Lewis aboard the U.S. Thunderbolt checked her weapon systems one final time. Her ship carried the latest human military technology, plasma cannons that could punch through any known armor, missile systems with perfect targeting, accuracy, and energy shields that could absorb tremendous damage. "Weapons ready, ma'am," her tactical officer reported. "Good. Target the enemy flagship and prepare to fire on Admiral Carter's command." Across the human fleet, similar preparations were taking place. Every ship was equipped with weapon systems that had been tested in secret for decades. Humanity had spent 30 years preparing for this moment, and every detail had been planned. The Vector fleet entered human weapons range with typical overconfidence. Their ships spread out in a wide formation, intending to surround the smaller human force and destroy them from multiple angles. "All ships, engage," Admiral Carter commanded. What happened next changed galactic warfare forever. The first human weapons to fire were long-range plasma cannons from the battleships. Beams of superheated energy reached across space at the speed of light, striking Vector vessels before their crews even realized they were under attack. The alien ship's shields, designed to stop conventional weapons, offered no protection against the advanced human technology. War Prime Vector watched in shock as 3 of his heavy cruisers simply vanished in balls of fire. "What kind of weapons are those?" he shouted. Before anyone could answer, the human cruisers opened fire. Their weapons were different from the battleship cannons, rapid fire energy bolts that struck multiple targets simultaneously. Vector ships began exploding across the battlefield as their hulls were torn apart by weapons they had never encountered before. "Return fire. All ships, return fire immediately," Vector ordered. The Vector fleet responded with everything. They had plasma bombardments, kinetic projectiles, and energy beams that had destroyed countless enemy fleets in the past. The space between the two fleets filled with deadly energy as 200 alien warships fired at once. The human ships didn't even slow down. Captain Jenny Lewis watched her shields absorb the enemy fire without strain. "Ma'am, enemy weapons are having no effect. Our shields are at 98% capacity. Continue firing. Target their command ships first." The human destroyers and frigates joined the battle, their smaller weapons adding to the devastating firepower. But it wasn't just the superior technology that shocked the galactic observers watching from a safe distance. It was the tactical coordination. Every human ship moved with perfect precision, their formations shifting and adapting to take advantage of enemy weaknesses. When Vector ships tried to close to boarding range, they found themselves caught in crossfire from multiple directions. When they attempted to retreat, human vessels anticipated their movements and cut off escape routes. Dr. Yexandra watched the battle through long-range sensors from her position on the council station, her 4 hands working frantically to record everything she was seeing. "This is impossible," she whispered. "No species fights with this level of coordination." The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. Captain Mike Rodriguez aboard the U.S. Warhawk reported to Fleet Command as the last Vector ships were destroyed. "All enemy vessels eliminated, ma'am. 0 human casualties, 0 damage to human ships." Admiral Carter nodded, studying the tactical display that now showed only debris where the Vector fleet had been. 200 ships that had terrorized the galaxy for decades had been reduced to scrap metal in less time than it took to eat a meal. Communications, open a channel to any surviving Vector forces in this sector. Carter ordered. The message went out on all frequencies, broadcast to every Vector base and outpost within 50 light years. This is Admiral Carter of the Human Defense Force. Your third battle fleet has been completely destroyed. You have 12 hours to withdraw from all Zephyrian systems, or face the same fate. The responses came quickly. Vector commanders who had spent their careers conquering weaker species suddenly found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't defeat. One by one, they began transmitting surrender messages. "Admiral," reported Captain Brooks, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 Vector installations. They're offering to release all prisoners and withdraw from occupied territory." Carter considered this for a moment. The Vector had never shown mercy to their victims. Entire species had been wiped out by these same commanders who were now begging for their lives. Negative. Continue the advance. No quarter given to species that commit genocide. War Prime Thector, trapped in the wreckage of his flagship, sent one final transmission before his ship's life support failed. His message was broadcast on galactic emergency frequencies, ensuring that every species in known space would hear his last words. "This is War Prime Thector to all Vector forces. Do not engage the humans. Do not fight them. They are not like the other species. They are death itself given form. Retreat immediately and pray they show you the mercy we never showed others." The transmission ended in static as the Bone Crusher's reactor finally failed. Admiral Carter looked at the debris field that had once been the most feared fleet in galactic space. Her expression showed no satisfaction, no joy in victory. To her, this had been a job that needed doing, nothing more. "All ships, prepare for the next phase. We have 6 more Vector systems to liberate." Across the galaxy, every species that received news of the battle fell into stunned silence. The Vector, who had seemed unstoppable for generations, had been wiped out in 17 minutes by creatures from a single world. The age of human isolation was over. The galaxy had a new apex predator, and everyone would have to learn to live with that reality. The liberation of Zephyrian space took exactly 11 days. Admiral Carter's fleet moved from system to system like a force of nature, appearing in orbit around Vector-occupied worlds and demanding immediate surrender. Most Vector commanders complied without firing a shot. Captain Danny Brooks stood beside Admiral Carter on the bridge of the Leviathan as they watched the last Vector transport ships leave Aquatica Prime. The blue-green world below them was scarred but alive, its oceans slowly beginning to heal from the damage inflicted during the occupation. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from the planetary surface," Brooks reported. "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was filled with emotion. "Human ships, this is Governor Murthan of Aquatica Prime. Our people are free. After 3 months of darkness, we can see the sun again. How can we ever thank you?" Carter's response was simple and professional. "No thanks necessary, Governor. Just rebuild your world and take care of your people." But the gratitude continued to pour in from across Zephyrian space. Messages arrived from every liberated world, from refugee camps, from families that had thought they would never see their homes again. The humans had done something that many species thought impossible. They had stopped the Vector. Meanwhile, on the Galactic Council station, Ambassador Kethara floated in her water-filled chambers, trying to process what had happened. Her people were safe. The nightmare was over. But the beings who had saved them were perhaps more frightening than the enemies they had defeated. She had watched the battle recordings that Council observers had managed to capture. 17 minutes. The most feared military force in the galaxy had been destroyed in 17 minutes by ships that moved like they were conducting a training exercise rather than fighting for their lives. Soft chime announced an incoming transmission. When Cathara activated the communication system, she found herself looking at Commander Morrison's calm face. "Ambassador, I wanted to personally inform you that all Zephyrian systems have been liberated. The Vrektor threat has been eliminated." "Eliminated?" Cathara asked. "You mean defeated?" Morrison's expression didn't change. "I mean eliminated. The Vrektor hegemony no longer exists as a military power. Their remaining forces have been disbanded, their leaders are in custody, and their war fleets have been destroyed." The casual way he said it sent chills through Cathara's body. An entire civilization's military machine had been wiped out in less than 2 weeks, and the human spoke about it like he was discussing the weather. "Commander, my people owe yours a debt we can never repay. No debt necessary, Ambassador. This is what neighbors do for each other." The transmission ended, leaving Cathara alone with her thoughts. Neighbors. That's how the human had described the relationship between their species. But what kind of neighbors had the power to eliminate entire civilizations when they chose to act? In the council chambers, an emergency session was in progress. Representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned silence as Dr. Yexandra presented her analysis of the human military demonstration. "The fleet composition we observed suggests that what we witnessed was not humanity's full military capacity, but a single expeditionary force," she reported, her 4 arms gesturing to holographic displays showing fleet movements and weapon capabilities. "Based on energy signatures and logistical patterns, our intelligence estimates indicate that Earth may possess between 5 and 15 such fleets, with potentially larger vessels held in reserve." The chamber erupted in worried murmurs. "Council." Chairman Vexthul raised his hand for silence, but it took several minutes for the delegates to calm down. "Dr. Yexandra," asked the Kalari Trade Minister, "are you saying that humanity has been hiding military capabilities that dwarf our combined fleets?" "I'm saying that humanity appears to be the single most powerful military force in known space, and they have been concealing this fact for decades." The implications of this revelation sent shock waves through the galactic community. Trade agreements would need to be renegotiated. Defense treaties would become meaningless. The entire balance of power had shifted overnight. Ambassador Veltar of the Montari Republic stood up slowly. "The question we must ask ourselves is simple. What do the humans want? If they possess this kind of power, why have they remained in the background for so long?" Before anyone could answer, the chamber doors opened and Commander Morrison entered. Every delegate turned to watch him walk down the steps to the speaking platform. His boots made the same soft clicking sounds they always had, but now those sounds seemed ominous rather than routine. "Honored delegates," Morrison began, "I've been instructed by Earth Command to address certain concerns that have arisen following recent military operations." The chamber was absolutely silent. Even the usual background hum of air circulation systems seemed to have stopped. "Humanity has no interest in conquest or empire building. We prefer peaceful trade and mutual cooperation with all galactic species. However, we will not tolerate the systematic extermination of civilian populations within our sphere of influence." Morrison paused, his eyes sweeping across the assembled delegates. "The Zephyrians requested our assistance, and we provided it. We hope this clarifies our position on galactic affairs." Chairman Vexthul found his voice. "Commander Morrison, the Council appreciates humanity's intervention in this crisis. But surely you understand our concerns about the military capabilities you've revealed." "I understand your concerns, Chairman. But I would remind you that humanity has been a peaceful member of this council for 40 years. We have honored every trade agreement, respected every territorial boundary, and contributed to galactic stability. The only thing that has changed is your knowledge of our defensive capabilities." Morrison turned to leave, then stopped and looked back at the assembled delegates. "Oh, and one more thing. Earth Command wants me to make it clear that we consider the systematic targeting of civilian populations to be a crime against all sentient life. Any species that engages in such activities should expect to face consequences. After Morrison left, the chamber remained silent for a long time. Finally, Chairman Vexthal spoke. I believe we need to revise our understanding of galactic politics. Dr. Yexandra nodded, already working on new threat assessments and diplomatic protocols. The galaxy had operated under certain assumptions for centuries, that no single species was powerful enough to dominate all others, that military conflicts would be limited and containable, that diplomacy was stronger than force. All of those assumptions had just been proven wrong. In the months that followed, every major civilization began restructuring their foreign policies around a new reality. Humanity was no longer the minor trading partner from a backwater system. They were the apex predators of galactic space, and they had just demonstrated what happened to species that crossed certain lines. Trade with Earth increased dramatically as species sought to maintain good relationships with their new protectors. Pirates and raiders who had operated freely for decades suddenly found themselves looking over their shoulders, wondering if their activities might attract human attention. The Zephyrian Confederation rebuilt, their worlds under human protection, their people forever grateful to the species that had saved them from extinction. But even they understood that their saviors were not to be taken lightly. Humanity had revealed itself to be the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The only comforting thought was that they seemed content to be left alone, as long as everyone else followed the rules they had just established. The age of human isolation was over, and the galaxy would never be the same.